She's saying, no, 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 I'm letting him be a man sometimes.
I think
It was
so.
quite sweet.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I thought that was so funny because it's like, oh right, you let him, the one thing you let him manage his relations with his own family. That's it's incredibly generous of you. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
but it's so interesting because it's like basically confirming everything that we've all been saying.
Prince Harry is leaning on vulnerable people and carefully staged moments to create the illusion that he's still tethered to the royal family. More specifically, he's trying to suggest a continued connection to his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth. But let's be clear, she's not here to speak for herself anymore. And when she was, the message was unavoidable. The idea of half in, half out. It just was never on the table. It wasn't a gray area. It wasn't up for negotiation. Prince Harry was told no. So, what we're seeing now isn't continuity. It looks a lot like a PR strategy, and that raises serious questions about Harry's intent, optics, and accountability. Here to help me break all of that down, I'm joined by the Royalists, Tom Sykes, and host of Paula Froelich Uncensored. Paula, so good to see you again. But Tom, welcome to the party. This is the first time I've had the pleasure of hanging out with you on Royally Unfiltered.
Well, I've definitely made it now, Kinsey. That's all I can say. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And Paula, I did say, do you mind if I crash your party? Because I do love watching the two of you engage. You've been friends for a really long time, right?
Oh my gosh, since I think what, Tom, 2002? When we were five. We've known each other since leading strings, and you can crash our party anytime, any day, anywhere,
I love it.
Kinsey.
We exited the womb and we were best friends. One thing
Exactly.
I did see you say, which is a perfect segue into this topic, is all right, I'm going to give it to Harry and Meghan. They've behaved themselves. Like 24 hours later, we get this People magazine cover. One of the things I'll read from the pages of People magazine, it remains very emotional. This is regarding Harry's pursuit at rehabilitating his relationship with his family. Harry and Meghan are both realistic. They're not approaching it with the expectation of a quick resolution. It's about taking small, manageable steps and seeing where things land. This remains very important to Harry, with Meghan supporting Harry. Tom, what was your initial reaction when you saw this People magazine cover drop in the middle of a state visit on the anniversary of William and Catherine's 15th wedding anniversary?
I was horrified, Kinsey. I thought that actually, I think it's cruel. I think that I understand that Harry has his differences with his family. I understand that he has his differences with his father. Look, to be honest, I wasn't surprised that they wanted to have a pop at William and Catherine on the wedding anniversary. That's one thing, right? That's their ridiculous sibling argument that Harry can't get over 7 years later, despite having been given every opportunity in the entire world, in the entire planet, despite having lived a life of unimaginable privilege that the entire rest of the world can only dream of. But to derail your father's most important moment of his entire life, I felt was just unutterably cruel. I think that Harry has consistently shown an astonishing disregard for his father's feeling. Harry's very, very protective about his own sensitivity and his own feelings, but particularly with his father, seems astonishingly um, immune to any consideration of his father's feelings. I mean, when Queen Elizabeth died, when Charles's mother died, Harry's obsessed with, oh, my feelings are hurt because you haven't invited my wife to Balmoral. And I mean, this is a similar sort of thing, I think, that it seemed incredible at this fantastic moment where Charles was finally stepping into his destiny, where he'd made these terrific speeches and Harry just couldn't let him have 72 hours. I thought it was a really mean thing to do, to be totally honest.
I love that. I love that quote. Paula, talk to me a little inside baseball because some might look at this cover and assume that the Sussexes had nothing to do with it. They can't help the fact that they're on the cover of People magazine this week, but there are conveniently planted some glowing quotes about how they're thriving, and that requires access to the Sussexes. The interview itself talks about how tight their inner circle is. So is it fair to assume that there might have been some Sussex strategy going on behind the scenes to secure this cover?
Oh, absolutely. They knew when, they knew where, they knew the exact date and time it was going to drop, Kins. I mean, here's the deal. You just don't randomly get a People cover. You also just don't randomly not know that your friends, wink, are speaking to People magazine. They needed to do something because despite their proclamations that Australia, their quasi pseudo royal tour down under, was a huge success, it wasn't. The polls, they did show that 80% of Australians knew they were there. That's great. But also 80% didn't want them there, didn't care. It was incredible numbers basically saying, go away. The Australians were shocked. They were appalled that Meghan would wear a blue striped shirt that many Jews thought were evocative of an Auschwitz camp uniform to the Bondi Beach massacre site and then immediately sell it on her new AI one-off platform. So they wanted to deal with that. And they did mention that no, it's just part of this. We've got to make money. We're not, and they did take a dig at the royal family. We're not supported by the taxpayers like they are. Well, girl, let's be honest. You went out and got a $14 million home with a $9 million mortgage that costs, with your cost of your home, keeping your lights on, and your security is over $3 million a year. These are choices you made. And another choice they made was to have People magazine drop on Harry's brother's anniversary and on the third day of King Charles's visit. And what was more striking for me was basically Harry and Meghan saying, the Queen understood. The Queen got it. And she knew that we could be of value for the Commonwealth and that everyone loved us. So we're going to go ahead and do just as we darn well please. And it was really just thumbing their nose at everybody.
Tom, Paul is absolutely right. And I feel like this is not the first example we've seen of Harry and Meghan trying to talk for the Queen since she's dead, which is just completely unacceptable. And I've been fair about this. I saw another commentator say that the Queen called Meghan evil after she died. And I said, I don't want to go there because I don't want to disrespect the Queen who's not here to defend herself regarding, even if it's negative about Meghan Markle, I don't think it's fair to speak for a woman who's no longer here. It is inappropriate to speak for this woman who can't defend herself or correct the record, right? And it's especially sleazy when he's just saying things that benefit his ultimate objective.
Well, I think that you're absolutely right. That there is this culture sometimes in the media of saying that people who've passed on said certain things because one of the wonderful things about dead people is that they can't sue you. It's impossible legally to defame somebody who has died. That is just the fact, right? The estate can't sue you. Nobody can sue you. So you can say whatever you like. You can say the Queen told me this, blah, 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 blah. And there is no legal comeback in any court anywhere in the world. Now, what Harry is doing, though, unfortunately for him, is in complete contradiction to what is on the public record. And it is a matter of public record. The Queen said very, very few things publicly, right? We don't know a great deal. We're starting to learn a bit more now that she's passed on and people are telling more stories about what she was like, her inner life, what she thought about things. But generally, we didn't know a great deal about what she thought. And really, she only said a couple of things about the whole Harry and Meghan imbroglio. One of the things she said was recollections may vary in that very brief speech. But another thing that she said in February 2021, 1 year after the Sandringham summit, she said to them at Sandringham summit, she said, go off, do your thing, for a year, come back in a year, and let's see, be really sure that you want to do it, which is incredibly wise and gentle and kind of her. Not gentle might be the wrong word, but it was certainly wise and generous of her to give them a year, change your minds. They came back a year later and said, no, no, we want to blast ahead. We want to do what we're going to do. And the Queen made a statement in which she said that a life of public service was incompatible with them wanting to lead this life of commercial independence. And Meghan and Harry then responded, you may remember, with this incredibly pompous statement saying, well, service is universal. I mean, as if the Queen was suggesting that you couldn't lead a useful and valuable life. I mean, it was just absolutely, it was so offensive. And I remember at the time thinking, how dare these people lecture the Queen on the meaning of service and the nature of service? So we know for a fact, because it's one of the very few things that the Queen said, that she thought, to use her own words, that the model that Harry and Meghan was pursuing was incompatible with a life of being a working royal. And we've now seen them basically trying to pretend that this didn't happen and trying to say, oh, everyone misunderstood. She was, you know, we saw this over and over again. The courtiers made her say it. Edward Young made her say it. I mean, it's so disrespectful to the memory of the Queen. I find it really, really, really sickening, Kinsey, really sickening.
I agree with you. Paula, the headline is Harry and Meghan making their own rules. We're talking about how disrespectful they are to Queen Elizabeth, but that feels like a middle finger to King Charles, making their own rules.
It absolutely is. And just to kind of feed on something Tom said, Harry was at the summit. Meghan has always complained that she was not allowed, and in fact has given quotes, I believe it was to Oprah or some such, saying, they wouldn't even let me go in, and it was figuring out my life for me. Well, she's getting her own now because she's basically saying, well, I never agreed to it.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry told me this, and of course, their recollections always vary when it's not in their favor. And now what they're doing, and I think it's awful what they're doing to his father. They would never have pulled this if Queen Elizabeth was alive. They waited a year, they waited two, nothing panned out, and now they go, okay, we're going all in. And don't worry, Daddy won't say anything. Daddy won't do anything. And they're quite banking on the fact that King Charles will be around for a lot longer than I think people initially thought. And this is one of the reasons that they're pulling it, because by the time King Charles shuffles off the mortal coil, they will have entrenched themselves in a way that will be very hard for William to correct.
Oof, I hate that for him. All right, here's one of the quotes, Tom, from the piece. A lot is forgiven when you're on the ground and you show up and you do good work. That magic and allure of a royal doesn't necessarily come down to a title. Then why don't they give up their titles, Tom? If that's the truth, if that's really the case, I feel like I see them lean pretty heavily on those words.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a ridiculous quote. I mean, of course, people who've come out to see you are going to be pleased to see you. I mean, it's just an absurd proposition. Um, but yeah, it was interesting actually. I'm in New York at the moment, and it was interesting on I think Wednesday or Tuesday. I had a meeting with a really great, quite powerful personal brand consultant who swore that he wasn't working with for the couple, but does live suspiciously near them, and was asking me, what would you do if you were them? What advice would you give them? And I said, honestly, the advice that I would give them, I would say, surrender your titles tomorrow, give up your prince and princess, give up your duke and duchess. A period of silence, I think, would be helpful. Harry, has got to earn money. I would think probably an amazing book about Princess Diana, co-written with J.R. Moehringer, would be controversial, but if it was done in the right way, could be amazing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he was like, yeah. And I said, but the problem is, of course, I think, well, Harry actually might be tempted if it was just him to give up the titles. Meghan's never going to ever in a million years give up those titles until they are taken off her. And just to pick up on something Paula was saying about Charles doing better than some people had thought. It was something me and Paula were. I'm in New York, and me and Paula were out for a drink last night with some friends, and we were talking about it. And a a person that I know who knows lots of the people involved in Charles's health journey has told me some details, which, if you want, Kinsey, I'm happy to tell you. I can't. I'm not reporting for my own channel while I'm here in New York. I'm just doing so, but I'm really happy to tell you
I'd love
what
that.
I know, if you would like.
Thank you.
So basically, the situation was that in the run up to Christmas, the treatment that Charles was having was these incredibly innovative, unbelievably expensive injections. That was the core of it. Now, there was other stuff on top. I believe there was radiotherapy on top, but the core of it was these immunotherapy injections that he was having once a week, that are absolutely cutting edge immunotherapy with some kind of RNA. Do you remember in the COVID, the vaccines, the RNA thing? Some kind of RNA element. And what Charles said at Christmas when he gave that speech saying, it's all been very successful and blah, 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 I am told is absolutely true, and that we should take the king at his word in what he said there. And they are incredibly encouraged at how successful this unbelievably innovative treatment has been. There is a lot of optimism. Now, everybody I spoke to couched this with the phrase, but of course, with cancer, things can change very fast. And we all know people who've had cancer, and we've all known things to change very fast, both for the good and the bad. But generally, what I would say is that the people, and another person I spoke to said, well, you can often tell by the people around somebody how they're doing. And they said to me, if Charles is really still really ill and not going to live much longer than it had looked a couple of years ago, those people should take up playing poker, because they're looking,
Yeah.
they're looking so happy and so delighted. So it's really really great news about the king, obviously, for his own health and all of that. But I think it is perhaps a worry in terms of, is this endless vacillation over Prince Harry going to just continue on and on forever?
Amen. Also, I was thinking as you were saying that if Harry had any sense that the king was in a better space physically, I feel like he would feel like that was permission for him to act out. If he did think his dad's health was on the decline, I love how we're acting like he has common sense for the moment, but I would assume he might take a step back and say, out of respect for my father and his declining position, I will behave myself, but we're certainly not seeing that. Paula, am I being totally narcissistic when I say that as I read portions of that article, I felt like they were clapping back at our recent nanny story?
They were. Absolutely. They were. I have been told that everyone is aware of the press and what is written about them. And of course, they're aware when I call up their people to ask for comment. So, yes, they are absolutely aware. There were several clapbacks in that article. Oh, no, we didn't do anything. We did this. It was very much as if that article, everything that comes out of their mouth is written by AI. It's not this, it's that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And I don't think you're the narcissist here. I think that those two are. And I think it's really unfortunate. I think it's also getting quite manic, with the exception of the first 2 days of King Charles's tour here. They have been dropping bombs every day and doing something. Hey, look at me, every day, as if attention is their new oxygen. And and we've got a lot of people saying, well, just ignore them. Well, I, for one, don't want to. This is my new soap opera, The Days of Our Montecito Lives. And it's got everything. It's got family. It's got drama. It's got betrayal. It's got greed. Literally, you could not write something better. And in fact, if they were to actually just do this as their Netflix program, perhaps Netflix wouldn't have dropped them.
That's your mic drop right there. Tom, Paula's absolutely right. I think that one of the things that makes these two even remotely interesting is that they never seem to make the right decision. They're unpredictable because I say obviously they're going to go left, and then they go so far right. And I think that that's one of the few things that makes them interesting. They just refuse to make common sense decisions surrounding their future and their brand.
I mean, the capacity to make ridiculous decisions is astonishing, isn't it? But they're also cursed by incredibly bad timings. Whenever they try to do anything, either leave the royal family, COVID strikes and shuts the world down for 2 years,
Yeah.
launch your new show, California, is on fire, delay your new show, World War III breaks out, it's like incredible. I mean, but there is this sense, I just always have this sense that Meghan's like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years behind the zeitgeist. Like everything is so sort of weirdly out of date and out of touch, and like it's very. But yeah, like it would be an amazing Netflix show, wouldn't it? Meghan screaming at everybody, "Get me a decent project, you idiots!" Blah 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 blah. Harry, walk the bloody dog. It would be fantastic. It would be great. Days of Unwanted CISO Live. So I mean, Paula's got the title, so.
They need to call Paula, obviously. Well, Paula, let me ask you, you're both in New York right now, King Charles, Queen Camilla. They visited New York this week, touring a 9/11 memorial, the 9/11 memorial, meeting first responders and attending separate events focused on community and literacy. They also attended a high-profile reception for the King's Trust at Christie's. New York versus DC. I felt like I preferred seeing the royals with policymakers over celebrities. Paula, have Harry and Meghan ruined the idea of royals and celebrities together? Because it used to be enchanting to see Marilyn Monroe across from the Queen, and now I feel like they should be above that. They should be better than that. Carrie Bradshaw taught us what faking it was. I don't want to see her next to the Queen. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I do know what you're saying. I take a little bit of a different tack. So the way the king did it when he came to 9/11 and stood shoulder to shoulder with former Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who is much beloved in this city. And I thought that was perfect. And I really thought it carried on his message of solidarity. And I didn't mind even the gala, of course, these people give. And because we have to, let's differentiate between celebrity and influencer. All right. Because what Harry and Meghan have come are not celebrity, they are influencers, which is a much lower tier. Whereas King Charles can still get the A1 tier. And these are also people who need to be shown so that people can also give to the King's Trust and continue their work. So I think it was that. And also, there were a lot of intellectuals there. There was a lot of people in the media there that were important. So I'm not that upset by it. I think a big round of applause should be given to King Charles for his entire visit. I thought it was spotless and just spot on. Great job. The one thing I do want to get back to just really quickly was in the People magazine. You know that they've been watching our stuff and reading our work because there was a pointed paragraph where it said, and Meghan lets Harry lead on certain things.
Yeah.
And it was, when it comes to royals, Meghan lets Harry lead. And you're like, I get it. Yep. Everyone knows that she's the one wearing the pants at all times. We've all written it. We've all said it. And yeah, there we go. She's saying, no, no, no. I'm letting him be a man sometimes.
I think
It was quite sweet.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I thought that was so funny because it's like, oh right, you let him, the one thing you let him manage his relations with his own family. That's it's incredibly generous of you. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because it's like basically confirming everything that we've all been saying, which is that fundamentally this huge internal tension between the couple about the social media presence, about the marketing presence, about the commercialization of the brand, the commercialization of the family. It's all being led by Meghan.
And I don't want to. I don't know if Paul and I have had this debate. Uh, Meghan Markle did something incredible in the sense that she got herself in the position to meet Prince Harry. But a lot of actresses end up on shows on the USA network that I never watch. I know that she's saying, I know what I'm doing. Listen to me. This is, we'll produce this, we'll produce that. But the return on investment simply is not there as far as I can tell, Paula, when it comes to Meghan Markle being in charge of some of these entertainment ventures, being in charge of As Ever. I mean, I don't want to disparage her and say I don't think she's smart. I'm sure she is a little smart, and I am impressed that she got in front of Prince Harry. But I haven't seen evidence that she is this savvy businesswoman that earns her spot on the Forbes stage or in front of Bloomberg.
Well, I think you've got it right there with the word earn. I think she expects and demands and wants. I think she has an idea of who she is, and now she thinks she should snap her fingers and go. But let's be real clear about Suits, shall we? When it was in its first run, it got on average 750,000 national viewers. That is less than 0.1% of our society maybe watched it. It was not an extremely popular show. And so she was kind of a D-lister. People in the States did not know who she was. She, of course, had an idea of who she wanted to be, and she entrenched herself into Toronto society. But again, saying Toronto society is kind of like saying, Cincinnati
Careful,
socialite.
Paula. Careful.
Yeah.
Just saying. But she understood it was the Commonwealth and that she was quite brilliant in social climbing, if you will. She's a perfect parvenu. She saw what she wanted and she architected her way right there to go get it. However, the problem is she has this issue, and we've talked about it before. She thinks she's always right. And yes, of course, she's smart. However, the problem is she's not smart enough to know what she doesn't know or to listen to people who know better and to learn from them. She says, well, I went to Northwestern, it's a good school, and so therefore I'm smart. Great. I went to Emory, it's a better college, but am I smarter than you? Probably not. However, I listen and I learn.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous that she leans so heavily on markers from her past to prove her credentials. The soap story for when she was 11. Girl, give it up. I went to college here. Okay. I mean, where did you go to high school? Are you going to bring that up too? It's ridiculous. But again, the bigger issue, Kins, is that she doesn't listen. She doesn't learn. She was a big fish in a very small pond. And then you can't bring those rules into the ocean and expect to be the big Moby Dick of the seas.
Absolutely. Tom, can I just, off of what Paula said, talking about that social climbing, that's exactly what I mean by seeing royalty with celebrity leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I think it's because Harry and Meghan have prioritized that, whether it's Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, they, Ted Sarandos, did I say it right, Paula? Sarandos?
Yep.
Ted Sarandos. It just feels like they're constantly using celebrities to give them credibility. But Paula's right. I'm being too sensitive about this because the celebrities that the king was with this week were genuinely contributing to something very good. And it's not just about elevating Harry and Meghan's profile or the royal family's profile. So I do have to give her that. But do you understand why, after watching that social climbing, I'm just like, ugh, whenever I see them with a celebrity?
No, I'm afraid I'm far too wise to ever disagree with Paula because she's always right, Kinsey. So you're not going to catch me out on that one. Um, I remember actually. Do you remember when the the baby shower, Meghan's baby shower in New York, right? All those years ago. And do you remember Mal Clooney arriving in the snow in the gold jumpsuit and like all of that? And that was when, you know, Meghan was still a part of the royal family, right? And she could get, as Paula makes this distinction, proper celebrities to show up. Like she could have George and Mal and the private jet, and it was all amazing. And like literally, who she got now? Some like, yeah, bunch of like, you know,
Brad Paisley's wife. No
yeah,
offense.
I don't know. I can't. I'm not even going to say the names because you know, but the friend Kelly Zaffin or whatever. Do you
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? It's like really that. You know, I mean, like you know, Serena Williams opening her chocolate online, going, "It's all smashed, and I hate chocolate anyway." I mean, it's just like, do you know, what I mean? It's just like that, like how this dream has crumbled in the 6 or 7 years. I mean, it is astonishing. I think when you look at, and you were talking, Kinsey, about the bad decisions that they've made. But when you look at the cards that they were holding 6 or 7 years ago, and you look at how unbelievably badly they have played those cards. And there's a really interesting thought experiment, right? Which is what would have happened if they'd done what the Queen, in her wisdom, suggested? Things would have been very different, I think. Very, very, very different if they'd hung on to their dignity, their integrity, and their credibility. Things would have been very, very different. They'd still be hanging out with George and Amal, I think.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
but
they'd
now,
also be quite wealthy. I
yeah.
mean, they're quite wealthy now, but it wasn't enough. You know, they would always complain about Harry's, you know, his allowance just wasn't big enough. But every time he complained, he got something better. He had this smaller place, then they get a huge house, then it's not good enough, so they get all refurbishment paid for by the taxpayers, which they had to eventually pay back. But it is ridiculous that they don't understand that they're yearning to be centie millionaires or even billionaires, and just really their greed kind of popped them out in the end.
Thomas, is Harry greedy? I don't think he knows the value of a dollar. I think it's Meghan who was auditioning for Shakira music videos and the pilot of the Beverly Hills 90210 reboot that is like that's back to that gig economy that she started in as an actress today, going from speeches to retreats for 2 hours or whatever. It feels like they're having to bounce from paycheck to paycheck and chase those paychecks the way she did growing up. But I mean, Harry hadn't paid a phone bill himself until 6 years ago. So is he really the one behind the greed, do we suspect?
Yeah, I mean, the royal family are very funny about money in many ways because actually they sort of do pay the odd thing, like the odd sort of phone bill and stuff themselves. And like, you know, I mean, famously, whenever they have to travel anywhere, they would always buy tickets on budget EasyJet flights, you know, because they sort of didn't have a great deal of disposable income. So they have a very strange relationship with money in that they and that would be very foreign to most of us in that a sort of it's not really part of their world in a way that it is part of everybody else's world. They just kind of it exists in a theoretical kind of fashion. And of course, the Queen famously, you know, never carried money. Um, but for somebody like Harry, I think the real problem that they've got with money is that the capital is there. So they have quite a lot of capital because he inherited a certain amount from his mother. They got a lot from the Netflix deal. They got a lot from the book. But they don't have any earning stream now. And as anybody will tell you, Kinsey, the worst thing you can do with your savings is spend them, right? What you need to do with your savings is you need to invest them, right? I mean, forgive me, you know, if but like the reality is that the outgoings so hugely are so huge. And it's interesting, again, somebody I was talking to this week told me that like, and you'll probably know this, Kinsey, because you live out there. But I mean, I'm told that the house that they live in is a kind of laughing stock. I mean, you know, that it's really badly decorated. I mean, look, what's the first thing you do when you buy a $13 million house in Montecito? You knock it down and build a new one. Do you know what I mean? Like you spent $7 million remodeling it.
The kitchen is very Olive Garden is what it's described as. but I love Olive Garden, you know?
It's very
But
Olive Garden because they
Oh,
did buy it from an oligarch at a fire sale.
oh, there you
but
go.
it is weird, isn't it, to buy a house like that for that amount of money and not do a massive remodeling job in like Montecito or New York or wherever. You know, if you're going to buy a big house, you spend
Make it
another couple of
yours.
mil.
Yeah. You make it yours and you improve it, so when you flip it, you get even more money. So yeah, you're right. That's a very interesting point. So Paula, I don't know if Tom sent you this piece by Richard Eden today, but we thought it was interesting and we wanted to discuss it with you. Both the King and Prince Harry received advice from Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, before Harry's trip to Ukraine and before King Charles spoke to Congress. And both men mention Ukraine, mention obviously Harry was in Ukraine,
Mhm.
defending Ukraine, challenging Trump, challenging Putin, and the king was in the United States saying we need to support Ukraine. Why this is suspicious to Richard Eden, and I agree, is that Cooper is among those backing Harry's planned return to public life, Project Thaw, as they're calling it. And the fear that my body feels when I read these words, because I did think when the king mentioned Ukraine during that congressional speech that it gave Prince Harry's trip a little bit of credibility. How are you feeling about this? Is Project Thaw reality? I've said no way in hell. Common sense says these two can't come back. I know way too much about that guy's ding dong, thanks to Spare. She is so, it's been so hateful to the British community. But I mean, this looks like an active project, and I'm going to pull my hair out.
I agree with this ish. Okay.
Ish.
Because the biggest issue that they have, yes, I think the king has weakness when it comes to Harry. I don't think he will ever pull a Queen Margaret of Denmark, waking up one day and saying, "That's it. Nope. I'm ripping off the band-aid. Nobody has titles anymore except for the actual heir and his actual kids. And then he can do the same to his kids in like 30 years. But that's it. And her other son was very upset, blah, 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 went to the media, and now they're okay. Went to grandma's for Christmas. However, he is very weak with that, but I don't think he or Camilla or anyone in the palace wants Meghan within 50 miles of them ever again. So I think possibly they are trying to meet on common ground, possibly meet the grandkids. He wants, of course, Harry there and the kids. They do not want Meghan. However, I think it's over Meghan's dead body that the kids go anywhere without her. So, and Harry clearly does not have the cojones to say, knock it off, Meghan. We're going. Dad needs this. It's never done it once. He probably won't do it ever. And it is quite sad. I mean, they can't meet with Meghan. Number one, what's it going to happen? Show up on her AI shopping site? What to wear to when meeting the king? What to wear when meeting your husband's evil stepmother? You can buy it all for just $10,000.
Uh,
Super easy. So yeah, I was with you thinking Project Thought, no way, blah, blah, blah. But you're right, the Yvette Cooper thing is too much to ignore. And then there was that line in the People magazine article of Harry's friends, wink, telling the magazine that he and his father are in regular contact. Now,
ah.
whether it's through
I've heard
Yvette
that that
Cooper,
is not true. I've absolutely heard that's not true.
and we wouldn't be shocked if anything Harry said was, again, from his own recollections. However, maybe it's in contact through Yvette Cooper.
Tom, can you chime in there? Are you hearing that they're regularly in contact?
I mean, they say they are. I'd say they are. But as I had an uncle who, when he died, and the vicar said in church, it's very sad to be very involved. He was a regular attender at church. He came every Christmas, which got a big laugh. Uh,
That's hilarious.
so what does regular mean? I mean, it's one of those words that means everything and nothing. They claim that he is. I don't know whether it's true. I think that Camilla certainly is a big factor, as Paula correctly identifies. I think what is beyond doubt is that Harry has made it very clear that he wants to spend more time in the UK. Uh, there is clearly the fact that the foreign secretary is giving him advice before he goes to Ukraine suggests a tacit endorsement, or at least a reluctance to prevent the trip happening on the part of the government. He clearly has significant support in the government, which is very left wing, kind of hates the monarchy. A lot of the government sort of, pinko socialist rats, basically, Kinsey. Who like the fact of Harry causing a bit of trouble and think that he's, agree with him that, oh, he's done a much better job on foreign tours and et cetera, et cetera. So I would not rule out at all. I mean, there is, he wants to have a base back in the UK. His whole team's in the UK now. Liam Maguire's in the UK. James Holt's in the UK. All his charities that he still has are in the UK. Invictus is in the UK. Scotty's Little Soldiers is in the UK. Travelist is in the UK. Everything is in the UK, and nothing is in the US. Right? The charity's gone in the US. All the support causes that they support have gone. It seems like the business is more or less gone. The deal with Netflix is gone. The deal, so like. I think that this is definitely ending with Harry living a significant part of the time in the UK. And I just don't think there's any doubt about that anymore. But I think the other point that's really interesting is that Meghan is clearly not going to come. So where does that leave the relationship? I would suggest that often relationships that are conducted where the husband and wife live large parts of the time in different countries, sometimes they work, but more often, frankly, they don't.
Paula, please reply to that, because that was amazing.
I can see where Tom is coming from, but do I think that Meghan would let him out of her sight for a minute? No, absolutely not. She lets him out for 2 days. Okay, go to Ukraine. Okay, there, go back. But I think the real danger is that if he's in England for 3 months, having a great time, remembering what life used to be like, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no. Also, he doesn't want to be away from the kids. So she's definitely not letting the kids go without her for a period of time. I think that if what Tom said occurred, that would end up in, I don't want to say divorce, but I think it would be a death knell for the relationship. And I think she's smart enough to understand that. Now, if there was a interesting billionaire who just happened to be single or sick of his wife and took an eye to Meghan, yeah, she'd let that happen. However,
and he's on his last leg. He's got a pretty nasty cough.
I mean, would she love a Bezos herself? Yes. Yes, she would.
Absolutely. Tom, another interesting part of Richard Eden's piece, he was speaking to somebody that had recently had a conversation with Trump, and they asked him about Prince Harry, and he said, "Can you take him back?" He knows. I mean, Harry's got to know that Trump isn't a fan, considering Trump, I think, would have said that to a media personality with a camera in his face. But he does seem to have a real affection towards Prince William and Catherine, and Richard said they're expected to formally be invited, or they have officially formally been invited to the United States. What the hell will the Sussexes do then? When William and Catherine are here, if they're pulling this People magazine card during this trip?
Well, I'm told that a certain amount on whether William and Catherine come depends on whether or not the United Kingdom progresses satisfactorily in the World Cup. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But I think it's going to be it's just going to be another exercise in all ignoring each other if they do come over. But it just highlight, I think, the difference between the paths that these two couples have traveled over the past 6 years. Because, and the irony of the whole thing, right, is that Harry and Meghan, before they blew everything up and started giving, were actually, unbelievably popular with the United Kingdom. Their press office was doing a marvelous job of presenting Harry as a fine young man who we'd all love to go for a pint with, and Meghan is, and it's, again, this thought experiment just to think, what would have happened if they'd just been a little bit patient? They'd probably be living in Royal Lodge, you know, with a large retinue of servants, the pick of fantastic royal jobs. Meghan could be demanding all the tiaras that she wanted, you know, and instead, where are they? As they say, in their Olive Garden kitchen in Montecito, desperately figuring out if they can do a meet and greet in Australia for 200 grand to keep the lights on, while William and Catherine are, you know, considering whether or not to accept an invitation from Donald and Melania to come. They'd love them to come, but hey, we might come, but only if England gets to the quarterfinals of the World Cup. I mean, it's crazy how far their paths have diverged.
Paula, it's mean-spirited and I feel guilty for repeating it, but I know I'm in a safe space. Since I've been here, I heard a rumor, I'm in DC, and I heard a rumor from a very trusted source that Queen Camilla is not exactly fond of First Lady Melania Trump, specifically that she wanted to confirm that she wouldn't be seated next to her during the state visit. I hope that's not true. Have you heard anything similar to that, or what's your reaction to that?
I have not heard that, Kinsey. Would I be shocked? Maybe not. You know, listen, this is such a big trip for Charles and Camilla. It is probably the biggest trip of his entire royal career that I think she knows he needs to be supported at all times. Does he need a familiar face to look at? Does he need a hand to casually hold under the table?
What a sweet,
Probably.
what a sweet reaction.
You
Paula,
know,
that's such a nice way to think of things. I mean, continue if you want. I just wanted to tell you, I loved the road you were
thank you.
taking there. I love the
Listen,
visuals you were building there.
she is his biggest supporter. She is his biggest defender. She is not going to let him down. Say what people will about Camilla. Many have not forgiven her for the Diana thing. But you know, that was a long time ago. And in the ensuing years, she has been his rock, period. And you know, I also like King Charles and Camilla. They were very good friends with my good friend Joan Rivers, and Joan was never wrong about people. If
Hmm.
she didn't like you, there was a reason and watch out for him.
Yeah.
If she did like you, come on in. Front door's always open.
Tom, I love Paula's version of events that potentially she just wanted to confirm she was going to be seated next to King Charles because he had a big speech to give full of humor, and she just wanted to ensure that she was there to support him versus any sort of disdain for the First Lady, who you know I have no issue with. So I do feel bad repeating it. Do you have any thoughts on that said rumor?
Well, I think it's interesting that the personal relationships are not part of a state visit, right? And we had Tina Brown saying that, you know, the king viscerally disliked Trump. Well, you wouldn't have known that if again, you know, if he did viscerally dislike Trump, he should take up playing poker. Because you wouldn't have guessed that. It was incredibly, it was all the language, all the body language, it's incredibly warm, all the spoken language was incredibly warm. I thought there was I thought there was a tremendous level of respect, and there seemed to be a fondness. And you know, there's these stories of them passing notes to each other, etc., writing notes. And I would very much think that it would be unlike Camilla to have sort of risked creating any kind of scene or upsetting anybody personally.
Yeah,
I'd
Paula.
also like to add, so sorry, Kens.
No.
Can I just add that it's her job to sit by whoever she wants to sit next to. And the other thing is, in her job as queen, she has had to sit next to, shake hands, and greet dictators, despots, oligarchs, and other sorts of unsavory people,
Years ago,
if you
Meghan
will.
Markle. Years ago, Meghan
Yeah,
Markle.
exactly. And so, therefore, do I think she's going to kick up a fuss about Melania Trump, who is, by all accounts, pleasant? No,
Pleasant,
I
very
don't.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't. I
Yeah.
think she's like, okay, fine.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. All right. So our verdict is that we don't believe that rumor. That's just a mean DC whisper.
Yes.
Okay.
And
I like that
frankly,
about
DC,
us.
DC is a viperous town.
Yeah.
And, you know, anyone. I mean, all you have to do is read about it, but anyone who's ever gone there, you understand it is a viperous, weird, nasty little town where everyone's just trying to say something about someone else.
Mm.
And this one, I don't believe it.
Okay, I love that. All right, Tom, what's your verdict? We are uh, filming this on the day of the leave of King Charles and Queen Camilla. They're leaving Washington. What is your response to what you've seen so far? Not overall, but what you've seen so far between Washington, Virginia, and New York?
I think the king stepped into his destiny. I
Mm.
think that it's a legacy defining moment. I think that 50 years of carping about this guy who couldn't, did he like trees? Did he want to make yogurt? Was he drinking cider vinegar? I think it's all been swept away. I think it's all been forgotten. I think it was an incredibly powerful reminder of the ties that bind the United Kingdom and the United States, that there may be a little local difficulty at the moment in the political relationship, but that does not affect the relationship between us, between the people of these countries.
Love it. Beautifully said, Paula. Your verdict?
I agree, but I just want to add, I think it was a powerful reminder of why the monarchy is useful and why Britain should keep the monarchy, because a regular ambassador would not have been able to do that.
But also, Paula,
They,
if we still had Joe Biden in the White House, we wouldn't have seen such magic. Like we do currently have a president that is enamored with the monarchy, whereas Joe Biden grew up in a household that really resented them and did not like them.
right, but if Joe Biden was in the White House, then we wouldn't be in this situation because he'd probably be in lockstep with Keir Starmer.
Mm,
So
very true.
the good thing that King Charles coming here did was to remind everybody this is why the monarchy is useful. We're not just for PR. We
Yeah.
do very important things at very risky times.
And we're the stability. The prime ministers, the presidents, they change, but we are
They
the
come go.
stability and that you can rely on.
Hmm.
Interesting. Tom Sykes, tell everybody, I know that they'll subscribe to you anyway, but tell everybody where they can find you so that they can keep up with your incredible reporting.
The Royalist channel on YouTube and the Royalist Substack. Please come along for the ride. It's fun. Buckle up.
I know you are very funny. And Paula Froelich Uncensored, my angel. Tell us where we can subscribe to you on Substack and YouTube as well.
YouTube is my name at Paula Froelich, Paulafroelich. And Substack, Paula Froelich Uncensored. And it's great. I not only do royals, I do celebrities, I do some billionaires, I do pretty much everyone.
Taken out of context, you sound like Meghan Markle.
Well, except for they actually talk to me because I'm good
Oh,
fun.
oh, snap. All right. Agree with us, disagree with us. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Everyone, what a joy to finally spend some time with Tom, Paula. You know I love you. We will see you again next time. I hope you'll both come back very, very soon. Thanks, everyone.